We're going to go over the update for EMS Charts with the new Nemesis compliance. On your login screen, select your service, your base, which will be the station you're routing out of for the day, your unit that you're assigned to, and then your shift. Include crew. For the first one, I'm going to select myself, select me, populate you in there. Second crew member, I'm going to ride with Stavely today, so I'm going to type his name. And then select Nick. Save, and that'll populate it for the next screen and the remainder of the ports. Select patient records over on the left, create blank chart. Then from here, you normally would go to import, find the appropriate incident number with the unit that correlates with that call that you were assigned to. Normally would import, but today I'm not going to do that. So I'm just going to use the defaults 9999 as an incident number. Confirm that all the information imported correctly. Response, lights and sirens. Category. You have a variety of categories you can choose from. However, today we're going to go with a medical emergency. It's also going to automatically change it to dispatched as, but you can change it. Select outcome. This is going to be treated and transported by EMS. Ambulance transport code. Initial trip because it's by default. Mass casualty, no, that's a new field. Dispatch location, station 201, that's going to be a new field there also. The crew members is the new Nemesis version 3, so you have to select what their category was or what their role was based off of the new requirements. For referring, this is the place where you're going to. Normally this would auto-populate with the call data when it gets imported from Central. But I'm going to have to manually type it in since we made our own chart number. Up here is a new field. You have to type in other type in residence, or for whatever the property is. You can automatically search it by typing. The requester is also required. That's going to be family via 911. Just something I like to add in there. Also select what your response was. In our case, it's going to be emergent response, which is immediate. And then receiving. It's going to be EMS. I've chose Palmyra as our ambulance association with our drop-down. And then we're also going to select transport agency as destination basis. That's a required Nemesis report also. Times are going to look a little different. We've actually added the seconds. This will hopefully help with the 2-minute validation. So many of you don't get those 2-minute reports when you're signed on. When you enter the reports or when you enter the time in, ensure that the dispatch en route, on scene, at patient, available, and transferred to patient care all have the appropriate date and times in place. And it's very important that you put the proper times in, especially the ones that did not transfer. Also remember, your available time typically is imported automatically at the time the chart was created, not all the time when Central releases the report. Transfer of patient care, this will help with document charting. This will be the time that you actually transferred patient care on scene over to BLS. Once you're done there, click Next to add patient down at the bottom of the screen. Automatically forces you to search. You're going to search for an existing patient. Slide that over. In this situation, I typed in Doe, and then you can also narrow the search down, which is slightly off the screen, but by utilizing the date of birth. Select the appropriate person from the screen. Confirm their information, that everything is correct. They may have had an address change or medication changes or history changes. The new area over here is barriers to care. This is now required under Nemesis. This is something you need to indicate of what was the barrier for you to provide proper care to them. If there's nothing noted, then select None Noted. And then go for the next screen and hit Close. That'll take it off the screen and make it compliant. Next area is medical history. This is similar to what we had before, but when you search, you're going to notice a lot more categories. With this basic one, you'll go through, you'll go and find an item, add it to the list, and then hit Save and Close, and it'll populate it. The ICD-9 and ICD-10 is for a billing situation, billing coding that we do not perform, but it's required under Nemesis. Your history and medications and current allergies is going to look similar to what it did in previous editions. Another area that's going to be required once allergies is completed is going to be down towards the bottom where it says obtained from. It's going to be a new area that's required. You can be able to select family, faculty, staff, healthcare professionals, not record it, maybe you just found it, patient, whatever it may be. Select who you got your information from, and also emergency information form. It's one of the similar forms that we handed out before if it's there. Areas now that are also required is under systems. We need to select a primary system. Symptoms are also required to have at least a primary, if not a primary and a secondary. Select whatever is appropriate. There can only be one primary. You could have multiple secondaries or multiple others in this situation for the symptoms. However, we need to make sure we indicate what is appropriate for them. Under impressions, we have our primary, secondary, and other. As in before, we can only have one primary, one secondary, but we can have multiple others. The other category is signified by the squares. And just make sure you select the most appropriate ones for the complaint. Anatomic location. This is just the general area of what's wrong. Patient acuity, the initial one, this is upon initial arrival. And then the final acuity is based off of when you provided patient transfer. Condition at destination, unchanged or improved. Document what if the patient has improved on situation. Chief complaint is exactly what it is, what the problem is, why they dialed 911, what is the problem that they're experiencing or having. Duration of complaint, select the most appropriate. History of present illness, this is you telling a story of why you're there. You want to know why you were called out. What is the backstory behind them calling 911 for you to come here? Take your time and make sure it's completely documented and paint your picture. Next area, reason for encounter. This is now required field. We're going to select non-injury. We're then going to move down to drugs and alcohol. You need to select the most appropriate one for the situation. Here I'm going to say none, and then select the most appropriate one from the pick list. These are all now required for state reporting, which we are required to do. Scene description, this is your initial impression of what happened and what you saw when you were on scene. The next area that is required is patients on scene, indicating how many are there. Also, first agency unit on scene, most likely it'll be us out of 2085 or whatever apparatus is there. The next area is other EMS or public safety entities. Even though you identified them on page 1, we're asking that you identify them again. So we notified Palmyra EMS Association, other EMS, and then you can type the unit number. You can also choose to add another if this situation arrives where the medics are on location or if you have an assisting apparatus there. Other agencies on scene, the generic one, this is where you can add in law, or if we had mutual aid, fire department, or rescue services there, you can include that in place. In this situation, I'm just identifying that we had 2 City Police Department officers in there. Another area is instructions given. That is not required as of this time. However, it may be in the future. Patient belongings. We identified that the patient had a cell phone with them. This is important that you note this in case something happens during patient transfer. We can at least identify that we saw something. Mental state. Go through and pick. They're oriented to person, place, time, and events. Neurological, what's most appropriate for them, depending upon how your patient presents. Last neurological baseline. So this is important. If someone says, last time we saw them was yesterday around noon, you can put that time in there. If you have any comments, you do have a comment section to include. Stroke scale, did we perform it? Did we check it? And is it negative or positive? Also, if there's any stroke symptoms, and if there was any paralyzation. As you notice, some of these fields are already defaulted. However, it is very important that you check them and make sure that's appropriate for your patient that you're dealing with. If they're not, you need to change them. This is also a required field now, the initial Glasgow Coma Scale. It automatically does the calculations for you as you enter the fields in. Also check your airway, make sure it's appropriate, if it's patent, compromised, or if it was secured with an airway. The outcome, typically it's going to be improved, and going from there. Respiratory, this is what your respiratory, they are automatically defaulted in place. And this area here for O2 is for when the police or other providers or staff provides oxygen concentration, oxygen administration prior to our arrival. Make sure the concentration is appropriately documented and also how it's being appropriately delivered. And if you have any comments you'd like to include in there, or maybe who applied it, you can include it in the comments section. Pulses are also defaulted in there. Make sure you check them. If you did not check them, just clear them off. Jugular vein distension, capillary refill, and edema are also automatically populated. This page is going to look a little different for our selection process. We now have the animation on there. Also, another key area when you go to enter, you can narrow it down. Then you hit the generalize. This is just the general one for the area, and select the appropriate areas for assessment and what the problem is. This is important. This is also now required under Nemesis. Another area that's required under Nemesis will be on the next screen. So once we save this and move on, you'll see the time assessed date cannot be the same time as you first arrived. It needs to be a minute or so later. Cannot be the same time that you arrive. It will throw a flag when you go to lock the chart. Go to the next page. This is your activity log. Again, make sure you fill this in appropriately, utilizing the times indicated on page 1 and also at the top of the screen. Your activity log must be in chronological order, starting from the first entry all the way down. Your heart rate method, based off of protocol, must be palpated. Your initial heart rate method cannot be taken with the pulse ox. It must be taken palpated. Put your blood pressure in and also your blood pressure method. Yet again, first set of blood pressures, first set of vitals must all be manually taken. Room air, what your SpO2 is through the pulse ox. Respirations can enter be next, and then respiration effort. Select the most appropriate one. Your initial Glasgow Coma Scale. Pain if the person's in pain, and then you can describe what the pain's like in the comment section. Remember your OPQRST acronym. And also select who assessed. It's important so we can go back and run reports on treating time. Also check your spelling. Hit the ABC button. Takes a second. As you can see, it popped off the screen. There was no spelling errors, but make sure you do that. Save and add a line. This will allow you to go through and document another activity. Yet again, must be in timeline order. Remember to enter all activities as appropriate for the situation that's going on. I'm going to go to the next page. Supplies are required. Open them up. Select the appropriate supplies. Use the radio buttons to toggle down and enter in the supplies that you used in quantity form. Once you're done, save supplies. If you didn't use any, just open the form and then save supplies. It brings you up. It shows that it's completed. Next, go to sign the chart. You'll enter your initial password and then your PIN. Save signature. And in this situation, I don't have a second signature, so I'm going to hit complete and lock chart. I'm going to file a special report. And this is in the event that I was operating by myself in a vehicle or any of you are operating by yourself. And remember, with all special reports automatically get emailed to the appropriate persons. In this one, I selected a supervisor, and I chose to have it automatically notify John. Make sure staffing is checked, which should automatically populate it. You fill out your narrative, and this can be used for anything, whether it's the 2-minute report. In this situation, it's the staffing report. If there's issues, obstructed, missing addresses, you can send that over to Danny. There's numerous things, special reports that you can utilize. As we go through, we go to lock the chart. As you can see, all warnings have been cleared except for those 3. You can select see results and it will take you over. As long as they are not in red, the report will lock.